Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers, editors, journalists, all different people who are putting stuff out so you can get some insight into what they're working on. And this evening, I'm thrilled because we have somebody who is absolutely indispensable to me, to you, to all of us. It is our buddy Rebecca Lewis, who is the senior state politics reporter at City and State New York. I will just say it is without a doubt the best, most informative political paper in New York State, and you are really at the top of the list. So thank you so much for everything you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on.
So you wrote this cover story that said, "Can Andrew Cuomo bounce back?" And you basically said how he could bounce back. Let's just start here, because since you wrote that story, he did in fact announce that he was going to run for mayor. Um, ask you to summarize a 1,500 piece in 10 words. How can he bounce back after so many difficulties? He basically resigned from the governorship in disgrace. And lo and behold, he was the front runner in the polls before he even announced he was running. I'm trying to get my arms around it.
It's he's been laying the groundwork for quite some time on this. Basically, since perhaps even before he resigned, as soon as he knew that he was no longer going to be in office. I mean, he was promising, "You haven't seen the last of me." This man has been in politics and elected office, for most of his life. There's not really an after for Andrew Cuomo. So he's been, keeping a low profile up until now. He has been quietly kind of planning his return. He would occasionally go to churches in the outer boroughs. He would occasionally make appearances as he was quietly making his decisions on what he wanted to do when. And so it was really to his benefit that he was largely keeping quiet this entire time, allowing people to, uh, maybe forget about some of the things that he's done, allow or been accused of, allow some time for some of the accusations to play their course. Yeah, it was really to his benefit to remain largely out of the spotlight for the past couple of years, as he allowed some people's memories to move on, allowed some of his own accusations, some of his court cases to get settled, whether it's at the DOJ or, in civil court, where one of the women who accused him of harassment ultimately dropped her case. So it's been an interesting couple of years. He's kept his head down. He's racked up some minor victories here or there, even if it hasn't been, a perfect comeback for him. And he's really set the stage to, come back as this problem solver for New York City and try to play up the best parts of his record at a time of really big turbulence for the city.
He's, I guess, hoping that the memories of him being on TV every day during the pandemic, and he handled that, I think, extremely well. He also, listen, every time I get to the airport, I say, wow, Andrew Cuomo built this airport, which has won awards and all that. And so that's on the positive side. Why do you think, and I couldn't really figure this out, that even before he announced, even though Brad Lander, who is obviously in office right now, Scott Stringer is, obviously a former controller and borough president and everything else, well known politician, in addition to popular people in Queens like Jessica Ramos and Zelnor Myrie in Brooklyn. These are people that New Yorkers know, that they trust, that have been integral in our lives, so to speak, in the political world of New York for the past, half a dozen years. Why? I can't figure it out. Why was Andrew Cuomo at the head of the polls even before he said he was going to run? I'm just questioning what's in the minds of my friends and neighbors.
I think it definitely helps to have near universal name recognition, even for former elected officials like Scott Stringer or current citywide officials like Brad Lander, even for popular state legislators like Zelnor Myrie or Jessica Ramos or even Zohran Mamdani.
And Michael Blake, I should mention Michael
and
Blake
Michael
from the
Blake,
Bronx.
former assembly member as well. None of that
And
quite
Michael, by
compares.
the way, was like a vice president of the National Democratic Party. I forgot exactly what his
Yeah,
role was, but he was very big in the National Party for a few years. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. I know it's just it's hard to compare to Andrew Cuomo when it comes to name recognition. A lot of
Uh,
these early polls are still, do you recognize the name and what do you remember about them? And for a lot of people, still, a lot of people do still remember Andrew Cuomo. First off, they remember his father, they remember the Cuomo legacy, they remember the family. There, people still remember, as you said, the COVID briefings. He was getting national attention. He was on the TV every single day. And for people who might not have been paying the most close attention to some of the more nitty gritty scandals that he went through, for people who maybe enough time has passed without major consequences for some of the harassment allegations that he faced. People remember the good times. It's been a couple years. They recognize his name and they remember that,
I guess so.
he
And
was
it is
around at the time.
interesting. Donald Trump is the president. Anthony Weiner running for office. Scott Stringer has had his bout with accusations as well, and Andrew Cuomo. They've all had accusations without, judging what the legal issues turned out to be, and yet they're all out there prominently, potentially, running for office. I thought it was very interesting, and it struck me that in his announcement, he criticized Democrats. He said the problem has been something to the effect of the problem has been Democrats. And I would think that as someone who's wants to be the standard bearer in New York City for his political party, that was strange. I don't know how else to. I can't imagine any other, Democrat to come out right out and say I'm running for office. It just seemed weird to me. I guess is what I was
I
saying.
I think it's kind of going into the direction that we saw in the aftermath of the November election. There was a lot of introspection. There was a lot of kind of soul searching from the Democratic Party. There was blame that was thrown one way or the other, and I think that there is a lot of concern about, the future of the Democratic Party, how they're interacting with voters, who they're interacting with. This concern that they're not reaching out to working class voters, that they're losing the multiracial coalition of voters that has traditionally been the Democratic Party. And I think that Andrew Cuomo is trying to come in now and speak to that. He's speaking to the the voters who might feel disappointed in the Democratic Party, who feel that the Democratic Party hasn't come to represent them. He's always been certainly a moderate, and he's always enjoyed bridging gaps between the parties, whether that's something that people liked or whether that's something that people didn't like, whether it was to his advantage or other people's advantage. It's something that he's always been very good at, and I think that
Yeah,
that's what he's
I
doing
guess
now,
so.
trying to
Yeah.
speak to everyone, I suppose.
I forget where I read it. It might have been in the Times, could have been in an article that I read in City and State. Said that this really is the beginning for him, and that if he could become the mayor, he's probably got an eye on something, either in the next congressional election or even in the next presidential election. Do you think that's it? I mean, I guess we should never not assume that that's what Andrew Cuomo thinks about, but do you think it's a part of a larger plan on his part?
Oh, absolutely. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
I don't, I
I was
don't, I
being
don't,
very
I don't,
cautious. I'm sorry.
I don't pretend to. I don't pretend to understand, or I don't pretend to know exactly what's going on in the mind of Andrew Cuomo. But, it's no
I
secret
know. I
to know,
apologize for that, asking you that.
it's no secret to say that this is a man who has his entire career eyed higher office, whether it was, his run for attorney general, whether it was his run for governor. There was the time when people were talking about him seriously as a presidential contender. And already people apparently are again all like doing that as well. There was already a story in The Hill about, people who might be talking about Andrew Cuomo as a potential 2028 contender. Now, the question is, if he does become mayor, which is, it seems like there's a solid possibility he's certainly leading in the polls right now. If he does become mayor, the question is whether he can break the mayor's curse in New York City and go on to
Wow.
higher office. Um, because a lot of times mayor ends up being sort of a dead end job, whether it's, perhaps of no
Whether it's
fault
Michael
of their
Bloomberg
own
or Bill,
or
whether it's Michael Bloomberg or Bill de Blasio. I mean, that's exactly what happened. Both of them had national, agendas, but those didn't work out. The question I want to ask New Yorkers, New York Cityers, I'm going to make the assumption that they're not satisfied with the Donald Trump presidency. We don't have to go into that. There has been certainly widespread dissatisfaction over the mayor. And so I would think in my own little world, I would think that they would want a change from the conservative Republican or the conservative Democrat, and then look to somebody like Michael Blake or Zelnor Myrie or Jessica Ramos or any of the others really. And yet there is this feeling that there's still a moderate voting bloc out there that would like somebody like Andrew Cuomo, even after a moderate Democrat like Eric Adams that hasn't worked out.
I think that that's one of the debates that you're seeing within the Democratic Party right now. I think that after the last election, some parts of the party saw the outcome as a referendum on quote unquote progressive policies, social issues, focus on those things as opposed to, kitchen table issues, populist economic messages. And it seems like every time there's an election, every time that there's Democratic uh, losses, there's blame that gets thrown around, and very often it seems like the progressive wing is on the chopping block. And I don't think that now is any different. I think that
Wow.
members of the Democratic Party, certainly, or at least leaderships, are once again analyzing what went wrong and saying, we suffered because of XYZ progressive policy, whether it's,
Right.
in New York City, defund the police or whatever.
Rebecca,
But
we got to go because we're essentially out of time. But price of eggs are up, gas prices are going up. We know what the tariffs might bring. I don't know why that economic issue still hurts Democrats when we see what's going on now. Anyway, you and I could talk for a very long time. Rebecca Lewis, senior state politics reporter at City and State New York. Say hello to Ralph and all my buddies over there. And we appreciate your time so much. And we appreciate your work, which is even more important than your time here. Thank you so much.
thanks for having me back on.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, folks, and then we're going to do an arts segment. Don't go away. All right, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I'm always thrilled when we talk about arts in the Bronx, and I'm even more particularly thrilled when we talk about the Kingsbridge, Riverdale, Van Cortlandt Development Corporation, otherwise known as KRVC. So let's welcome Shari Hall, who's the Associate Director. Nice to see you, Shari.
Hi,
Thanks.
Gary. Nice to see you too.
And we have artist and also a community organizer, Denis Haxhija, who is going to show off some of his stuff. Nice to see you, Denis. Shari, let's just start with you. Talk to me about this. So KRVC is a development corporation, but you have this whole thing with art, and you have called the office space, very small office space, but you've turned it into a gallery at times. Talk to me about Gallery 505. What's it about?
Well, Gallery 505 was founded in 2019, and we wanted to focus on, local established and emerging artists, from the Bronx. And we feel that culture, is vital to the community. Art and music create conversations and bring people together and create connections. And, it's an escape for people. It takes you away from your everyday life, work and responsibility. And so we
I think, Shari, I think it's interesting because people know the Development Corporation, and you work with businesses and you work to stimulate businesses. I always think it's very smart thinking when an organization like yours says we want to include art in this, mosaic, so to speak. What does art do? I mean, you started to say it, you started to answer the question, but what does art do to KRVC in terms of broadening, your offerings and kind of engaging people?
as I had mentioned, it brings people together. It creates conversation. It makes connections with people who you may not necessarily meet under other conditions. And it's nice. It brings young and old people in the community to a space to enjoy different things. And we also want to support the arts.
Right. Certainly, my thought is that it makes it easier to do the kind of work you do when it comes to development or supporting organizations. You bring all those people in, and all of a sudden they're partners with you, as opposed to, oh, that's an interesting development, your corporation. You know what I mean? It really engages them in their minds and who they are.
No, exactly. In fact, I can't tell you how many times someone walks by our office and comes in and they ask, "Oh, are you new? How long have you been here?" We've been there since 2015 in that space. Before
10
that,
years, yeah.
KRVC itself started on Broadway above Mavis. It was also 236th Street in 1981. I was not there, of course. None of us were there. But
well, I can tell you this. My father was there.
Oh,
so there you go. My father was one of the board members way back when in the 80s.
Actually, your mother wasn't
my mother? Well, he passed, and then we don't have to go into my whole family
no,
history, but
mother,
that is what happened. He passed, and she took
right.
up.
And I did know her.
There you go. Anyway, so now let's see. We have an opening reception on Thursday, March 20th, and that features our buddy Denis Haxhija. There is the flyer for it. The exhibit will run through the 10th, which is actually starting a little earlier than the opening reception, through May 1st. Denis, let's just talk about you as an artist. Explain to me about how you got into art. You and I met because of kind of your community work, and then I had no idea that you also were somebody who did this stuff. So let's just talk about you as an artist.
I've always had an enormous love for art. It was always a side hobby and a passion of mine. From a very early young age, I was always sketching, drawing, ships, cruise ships, and architectural drawings, etc. And then during COVID, in the pandemic, you had so much free time to do all these little things that you don't really get to immerse yourself in. So I took the hobby of painting, and I would paint a lot during quarantine. Just order canvases in bulk and just let my imagination run away. Once you put that, brush on the canvas, it's your story to tell. So you're in charge of it. I've always had inspiration from, Michel Delacroix, Paul Delvaux, Florian Stettheimer in terms of the places aspect of my art. But then in faces, Hopper, Warhol, Lichtenstein, more of that pop art, 60s, 70s style. So, art has just always been a big, hobby of
So
mine, big interest.
one of the things that resonates to me right away, and I have other examples of it, but the pandemic, as difficult and as horrible as it took the lives of obviously so many. It also gave people a chance to do stuff that they otherwise might not have done. And you are probably as good an example of that as anybody.
For sure. I mean, I got to teach myself tennis and new styles and techniques
Wow.
of art and hiking in places where I never would. So obviously, that's such
I
a
don't
dark,
want you to be
challenging
out
time.
here. I don't want you to be out here rooting for another pandemic so that you can focus
Oh,
on
no,
these
no, no.
things.
God forbid. No, 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 no. That's way past us now. So just looking ahead. But yeah, I then took that into hobbies, and I also started teaching art to school age children at a learning center in
Wow.
Marshall that opened just for kids that were in remote learning. Because, remember, for a year, 2 or 3, kids did not have access to the art. So I would go in once or twice a week and do different lesson plans. I'd also coordinate with Lisa Cooper from the Next Door Gallery, Lisa Contemporary Art. I'd also host a lot of paint and sips at my co-op. All of them would be sold out. It would be a lot of fun.
Wow.
Sometimes there would be a little more drinking than painting involved, but
Is this some reception of Faces and Places, the solo exhibition that's going on that will have its opening reception on March 20th? Is this like the first time you've had a gallery like this, or have you displayed before? I just want to get where it's at in your, in your artistic life.
definitely. So this is my first
Fir-
solo exhibition,
First
just
one.
myself.
And
Thank
thanks
you. Yes,
Shari
yes.
and my friend Laura for putting that together. That's wonderful.
And Nina, yes, I'm very grateful for all of them. I have displayed at other shows, such as the Pequot Library Show every year in Southport, Connecticut, in Fairfield County, and then the Mamaroneck Artist Guild in Larchmont, up in Westchester. I've also displayed at the New York Public Library in North Riverdale,
All
and
right, so
then
you've
in
been
some
around a
small
little bit, but
publications.
this is the first solo one. All right, let's take a look. I
Yes.
mean, Shari, are you ready? We're going to take a look here at some of that. You've seen it already, I'm sure. But let's go ahead, Anderson. Roll the magic pictures here. Well, so here you go. What materials is this? Is this pencil?
This is acrylic on
Acrylic.
canvas.
Okay.
So this is a scene based on Lyford Cay in the Bahamas, which is a hidden enclave, and they have a very special country club that's shaped, the center of it is shaped like a circus tent. So it's a very vibrant, very unique and interesting display. This is supposed to be a typical party scene. And instead of just doing a typical blue sky with sun, I thought to make it a little bit of a stormy, cloudy sky, just add some character to it.
Were you there, Dennis? Were you there and saw that? Or is this from memory or from a photograph or something like that?
That's actually from a photograph from a friend. Most of my
Okay.
paintings are from firsthand experiences and recollections. This one isn't, however, but
Okay.
most of them are.
So I was right for asking that question. All right, fair enough.
Yes.
Let's put up another one.
This one's actually from a photo from a trip, St. Lucia. I thought this was very simple. It's on a very small canvas, but I love how the colors contrast from a little bit of a sunset sky behind the main point in St. Lucia. And also, of course, the aqua in the foreground.
Yeah, I like very much the waves. I like very much the waves, that it wasn't just a sunny, placid day. You could tell that it had a little weather going
Yeah,
on.
you get to play around with the ripples like that, little details like
And
that.
these are all acrylic on canvas?
Most of them are. Then there's some that are oil on canvas, which is, of course, more tricky. And then also some mixed media collages.
Okay, let's take another look. Oh,
Which
speaking of
exists today.
collages.
Yeah, so I'm a huge lover of Italian culture, food, music, fashion. So I have this as a homage to Italian culture. This is a mixed media on a wood panel. So you're going to see some typical, Prada, Dolce Gabbana advertisements. There are also some, cards from Arthur Avenue businesses and
I was going to say, I see Mario's down there.
Yes, that's very special and near and dear to my heart. So this is a bit of, you get to play around and make it your own. It's very fun.
Okay. I don't know how many more we got, but we got one or two more.
Yes, this is a scene that I witnessed firsthand, Worth Avenue in Palm Beach down in Florida. This is my favorite town in America. I think there's something very, very special about it. It's kind of like a fairy tale. So every square inch of Worth Avenue is paintable. I mean, everything. There's just the aroma, the colors, the architecture, Mediterranean, Italian. Everything was built in the early 1900s. I really love this scene, how it captures just one still shot that I captured myself from a trip last year.
Did you set up an easel and do it like there, or did you like get the mental picture, or even take a photograph and do it later on?
Take the photo and then do it at home in my studio.
There you go. Okay, I think we got one more to show. Let's take a look. Well, this
Yeah,
we know
this is a
this
little more of a pop art. The Hershey Kiss. This, I was looking at a Hershey Kiss one day, and it's just such a simple but interesting wrapper. I'm like, let me put it in the foreground with some type of pop background. Think kind of like Andy Warhol, but more of an object based. So I love the way this is actually an oil. So this took quite a few days because you have to do in stage and phases so it could dry.
so each
You have
one
to be
dries.
very,
Yeah.
very careful, especially when you're mixing or intertwining paint on top of another paint.
Well,
So, yeah.
the artwork is simple and communicates. And Shari, how many paintings do you know? How many are up there, or going to be up there?
Not yet.
25,
We'll
30.
find out when he comes in. We have 2 wall spaces devoted,
I just want to urge people to get over there and see it. Remind me, the address, I guess, is 505, right? That's where it comes from, Gallery 505.
505 West 236,
West 236th Street.
off of Riverdale Avenue.
Right. The opening reception is Thursday, March 20th. Oh, there it is. And the exhibit will run for a bunch of days. There's a little more information about our buddy Denis. Shari, last question, then it goes for you. What's next? You looking for more artists? I mean, how does it work? You just find people in the neighborhood, they come to you? How do you come up with this stuff?
A little bit of both. Nina Velasquez is our art program director, and she helps curate. She has a bunch of people scheduled. There's people we come across, people she knows, from her artist endeavors.
Right.
And,
So that's good. So listen,
yeah.
I just think it's great that a development corporation has that broad vision to incorporate other things, to bring people in and understand that development is not only, putting up brick and mortar and stores and stuff like that. And it
Right.
says a lot about who you are and what the folks over there at KRVC are about. And Denis, more of the same. We want more. That's what I'm telling you. So let's get through this one, and then we'll get to the next one. And we appreciate your time on the Bronx Buzz this evening. So thank you both very much. We appreciate it. That will do it for our show this evening, folks. You know what we always say: if the creek don't rise and the curtain don't fall, I'll be back next week. That's how it works. So we'll see you soon. Good night.